In the Marines, there's a saying that says, run towards the sound of chaos. I don't think I truly understand what that quote meant until years later when I was out the Marine Corps and I was able to reflect back on my time in the Marines and thinking back and all of the crazy stuff and the long hours and everything that happened. And I think that afterwards, and I started working in the civilian side of the workforce, I really understood what that quote meant. Running towards the sound of chaos is just the epitome of being in the middle of the fight, of leading the charge in a challenging situation. And leading from the front is the forefront of leadership. It is what makes a leader, is being there in the front with everybody else. Now, when I became a manager outside of the Marines in the civilian side, I wasn't the type of person to really take on stress. There were situations, where I had to be up late at work and answer emails and calls at 3 a.m. when I was in the middle of sleeping or whatever. But it wasn't necessarily stress. If anything, I'd say it was more of an annoyance than stress, because I haven't felt to this day the type of stress that I felt while I was in the Marines. It's quite different type of stress. It was a lot more mentally straining, but it never felt like that to me in the workforce outside. And I want to take this home for everybody, right? Because I understand that not everybody was in the military, but my point is that when I hear this quote, run towards the sound of chaos, to me it means that regardless of what you're feeling, regardless of the stress, of the mental impasse, of the physical ailments of being able to really give it 110%, you're still there. And there's some people right now who are not willing to do that. And I'll agree with you to a point, because I don't think that I could give the same effort I did in the Marine Corps for a business that I work for as opposed to a business that I own. And I think that that's a big distinguish, right? Because if you are a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business that you created, you will work however long it takes and you will put in however amount of effort you have to, and you will waste however amount of money you got to invest into it. It's quite different giving 110% there than giving 110% at a business where you work for somebody else, that at the end of the day, that money goes to shareholders, to stakeholders, maybe to you as well if you're at a high enough position. And you just don't feel the same incentive. At least I don't. But why is this quote so important? Well, it's important because being at the forefront, being at the tip of the spear, really sets the example for all the employees. And that is the most important thing of being a leader, is to set the example. There's a quote that goes by, do as I say, not as I do. And I don't agree with that at all. If you're a leader, you lead from the front and you set the example for your team to follow. And if you don't set the example, guess what? Your team is going to see that. They're going to see that you leave an hour early every day and you get there an hour late every day. What do you think they're going to do? Well, why am I going to be here till 6 p.m. if this guy leaves at 5 p.m. and he's here at 10? There's no way I'm going to be working, extra hours. There's no way I'm going to be answering phone calls outside of my work hours. Why would I do that if my boss leaves way earlier than I do and they get here late? Being a leader is setting the example and doing the stuff that needs to be done in the correct way so that your team can feel inspired to work for you and for the operation. It's also important not to give guidance on processes you don't truly understand yourself. You don't want to be in a position where you're leading a team into the ground because you have no idea what you're doing and you don't understand the complete process of what the goal is. Maybe you were put in a position where you had to lead and you're doing the best you can, but if there's some discrepancies there and you're seeing everything spiral out of control, you as a leader need to take the initiative and raise your hand and say, hey, I'm not up to this task. I need the skills from somebody else, or I need you guys to educate me on how to accomplish this goal, because there's such a thing as failing your team as a leader. As a leader, you can also fail the team and put them in a situation far worse than they would have been if they just had the proper tools and the proper leader at that point. An also important factor is that you want to be the leader that you needed when you were starting off. You want to be the leader that at some point in your life you thought, wow, I wish I had this type of guidance. I wish I didn't have this type of person micromanaging me. I wish I didn't have this person who speaks to me this way. I wish I had a leader that did X, Y, and Z. I wish I had a leader who didn't leave late. I wish I had a leader who left earlier. I wish my leader actually set the example. Everything that you think of when you were starting off and you said, this is insane, I would never do that. You need to consider that, because there's a lot of times where those habits that you were being given by other leaders start flowing out of you, and you start implementing those same things that you complain about onto your team. So make sure you self-reflect, you take a step back, you review what you're doing, and that you do not do the same mistakes that were done with you. Conversely, there may be things that you complain about that now you understand why they were done. There could be something, maybe a policy that was in place, like, I don't know, you have to wear safety shoes every time you go to the warehouse, and you're like, wow, I don't have to wear safety shoes. There's nobody here, whatever. But now that you're a manager, or now that you're a supervisor, you see yourself enforcing those same things in a positive way, right? Because now you understand the severity. Now you're in the meetings, you're seeing why they're serious. You're seeing people from other locations that have gotten injured. You're seeing, you have a wider lens now, essentially. And there could be things as well that a manager at one point told you, right? Let's use that example, the safety shoes example. And you say, okay, I get it now, but I didn't know that at the time. And I just want to make sure that now my team understands why it's important, because sure, I get the perspective that that leader was coming from, but I didn't understand why. And I want to make sure that my team understands why. Now, you as a leader, you can say, well, hey, guys, I was in your situation. I also didn't like it, but guess what? This is what I saw at the meetings, and this is what they're showing, and this is why it's important. And even then, you can agree with the previous leader and then still improve on the lack of communication in this example and give it to your team. And guess what? You create a better team. And that is very vital to the organization and to the bottom line at the end of the day, especially in this scenario, because you're going to prevent an injury. Now let's go back to the quote, run towards the sound of chaos. When you run towards the sound of chaos, that means that there is literal hell. There's a fire, there is a customer that's throwing stuff, everything is going bad, and then Act 3 starts, the leader comes in, they're in the forefront, they're getting attacked by the customers, there's a fire, the leader's putting it out, everything's crazy, it's the climax of the story, everything's going wrong, and you are behind them, and you're seeing them take care of the situation that was driving you crazy, right? And then you as a leader, if you've ever been in that situation, you might hear something like, you make it look so easy. You made it look easy. When I was struggling, the team was having a hard time. You came out from your management office, you came out from being a manager, and you went to the front as a leader, and you made the solution look so easy, it was insane. And that's what running towards the sound of chaos is. It's you getting up, going to the front, and resolving the problem that was there for the team, because they lack the skills, or they don't have the tools, or they don't have the experience to properly do it. You as leader do. You go in, you fix it, and everything's better. And guess what? The morale from the team improves. Some of the best leaders I've ever had were in the Marines, and really learned what it means to be a hard worker, meaning that it doesn't bother me to work long hours, because think about it. You're 18, I was 18 when I joined, right? But you're molded into a certain mindset, and then you see it over and over again, and you see that same mindset in other people, and you see people who are such high performers, dude. And you have leaders. I had good leaders. I know that that's not the case for everybody, but in my situation, I was grateful enough to have good leaders. And you're in situations where you really see where that gap of skill is, right? And I always thought, okay, I need to bridge that gap. But I quickly realized that gap I thought I had, I bridged really quickly in that first position that I had coming out. And I found myself doing exactly this, running towards the sound of chaos multiple times without even me thinking about it. I was just so used to mayhem going on and you having to go and resolve those issues because that was my job, to now being in the civilian side and having these so minor issues that who cares about? I mean, at least I always think about it this way. I'm brainwashed, but I'm always like, okay, we're moving car parts. It's not the end of the world, but I was like, whatever, I'll get the job done because that's what I get paid to do. But whenever there's chaos, I found myself going in and fixing the chaos, and it created this type of positive feedback loop in me. And I said, I like the way it feels to fix these types of things, right? And then I got promoted and all this other stuff. And the principles were the same. Every time there was a situation, I found myself going in and finding a way to fix the discrepancies that were happening. I was running towards the sound of chaos. And that feedback loop continued. I would have employees, I would have my leadership, my managers reinforce that behavior by saying, hey, that was good. Or my employees would come and say, hey, I appreciate that you did this. Hey, I like that you did X, Y, and Z. Hey, I've learned a lot from you, the way you're a leader, the way you manage. And it's a feedback loop, and it reinforces that behavior. And what I'm getting at with all this is that if you are a leader, if you are a business owner, you need to be running towards the sound of chaos. You need to be the person that's in the front lines when everything goes bad, when stuff is going, there's a freaking fan coming out of the ceiling, it's falling, whatever's happening, the building is about to explode. You need to be there. Because this is, and if you're a business owner, this is even more important because you are the face of your business, especially if you have a small team. If you have a pretty big team where you already have departments, you're still the face, believe it or not. You're always going to be the face. But at least at this point, they have a little bit of other managers that they serve as, that impasse where they report to them directly and you're just kind of like grandpa now. But my point is that you will always have to run towards the sound of chaos, and you will always have to fix things in the front lines. And you need to teach these principles to your team. If you don't teach these principles to your team, you're going to find yourself being the one that does this every single time. And you can't have that. You need to have people who run towards the sound of chaos in every department, in every branch, in every little location, because you need to have people who can resolve these issues quickly when they arise and not wait for you, especially if you're higher up in the totem pole, to be doing these things for them. Obviously, if the scenario is crazy and it calls for you to have to do that, then yes, you're going to have to do it. But if it's something minor that somebody there at that location can take care of, they should be. If you're somebody right now who is at the bottom of the totem pole and you're watching this video and you're like, man, take this as a sign of motivation to run towards the sound of chaos and to at least try to come up with solutions. I'm not saying that if you've never been in a situation where you're a manager, where you're a supervisor, or you don't even know what the heck to do, you just started working, bring up opinions. If you see something and you think it's a big deal, bring it up to your boss and say, hey man, I saw this and I think that we can solve it by X, Y, and Z. Do you think that would work? Yes or no? No, I don't think it would work because of this reason. Okay, cool. Well, now I know that. You learned something new. Yes, that's actually a good idea. Good. Positive reinforcement for you. You start understanding that your solution to that problem was correct, and you move on and you do it again and again and again. Take this as a sign to run towards the sound of chaos in your workforce. Whenever there's something going bad, go in, learn what happened, fix it, and teach the team to start doing those types of resolutions. Because if you have a team that everybody does this, you're going to have a seamless operation. Now, you don't want people to just start making all the decisions themselves, right? You don't want people to, figure out what's going to be good or bad depending on their opinion. You still want to have managers in there that really filter that. But the point is that you want people to jump in to solve these issues, to run towards the sound of chaos, because that is, at the end of the day, what is going to put fires out quickly. And my last comments on the topic is to train your team. You want to make sure that your team is trained correctly, that they understand all the policies, that they understand what to do in certain scenarios, and that they are ready to properly run towards the sound of chaos. You don't want to lead them to failure, like I mentioned earlier. You don't want to put them in a scenario where they're going to fail. You want to lead them to success, and you want to give them the tools and the principles that they need to properly fix the chaos, not just run towards it and then nothing happens. They don't fix anything because they didn't know how to fix it. Make sure that you as a leader are actually giving them the proper tools to succeed.